Hello and welcome to Friday Night Arcade. My name is Aaron, and this week on Friday Night Arcade, I thought I'd change things up a little bit. And this week we're going to be taking a look back at Nintendo Power issue number 21. Now, what is interesting for me at least about this issue is that this issue was released in February of 1990. And it's now February of 2019, so this issue was technically released 29 years ago this month. And also this issue is special for me at least because this issue was actually my first ever issue of Nintendo Power. There's a lot of memories that are just sort of scalded into the back of my brain from this first issue of Nintendo Power. This was, Nintendo Power was the only gaming magazine that I had a subscription to when I was a kid. And if you had a subscription to Nintendo Power as a kid, you knew what was going on. You usually knew some codes to the games, or you knew what games were coming out. And I just kind of remember my head exploding when I first read this thing. I mean, I just thought it was so cool to read through it and see the pictures of the games that were coming up and see screenshots from the games as well as artwork from the games. I remember kind of being surprised by the cover. And the only reason that I was surprised by this cover is because whenever I subscribed to Nintendo Power, all the cards that I found for it that you could send in to subscribe, they always had a picture of, I think it was whichever issue had like Super Mario Bros. 3 on the cover. It was either Mario 2 or Mario 3, so I just assumed that was the issue I was going to get. I didn't realize that, I was 10 years old. It didn't occur to me that, like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna get whatever the current month's issue is. And Nintendo Power covers were always kind of fascinating anyway. Sometimes they would use claymation to get this look. Sometimes it would just maybe be artwork from the game. A lot of times it was claymation or some kind of special artwork that they put together just for the game. And this is really interesting. So I'm not sure how they did this. I don't know if, like, maybe this part is claymation down here, and then some of this is maybe some sort of, I don't know if it would have been done on a computer back then. I don't know if this was just hand-drawn, and then this almost looks like maybe some sort of paper mache or something like that. I'd be curious if anybody knows any more about this specific issue, how they put this cover together. That would be fascinating to me. So anyway, we're going to take a look back at this issue of Nintendo Power. I'll do my, this is unscripted, so I'm just going to kind of waffle through this, and then I'll do my best to edit it down to make it into something hopefully watchable. And I'm also going to do my best to not have a midlife crisis while I'm reading this. To think that this came in my mailbox 29 years ago this month is pretty crazy. Anyway, let's open this up and get into this. So, it looks like right away they've got a sales pitch to try to get you to subscribe. But unmask the power animal in you. Score power. That's right. So if you subscribe to Nintendo Power, you can score power. That's what they want you to know. And this crazy guy right here. Look at this guy. How can you not go wrong with this guy? He's got denim, he's got crazy hair, he's got the controller holding it upside down for some reason. For just $15, you could be as cool as this guy. So, how about that? Radicalize your game with a subscription to Nintendo Power. Each month you get it all. Scorching power tips, molten hot strategies, amazing inside info, and must-have advice. And he's even got claws for some reason. I don't know why he's got claws. And an airplane pin. Okay. Moving on. That's quite enough of that. So here we've got table of contents. This was always kind of cool, just to have this, and you can kind of see what's coming up. There was a lot to a Nintendo Power magazine, because you had the players forum, there was always like a top 30, there was tips from the pros, special reports. There was always kind of a what's coming soon, as well as previews of current games that maybe just came out recently. Again, Volume 21, February of 1991. How about that? First up, we've got the mailbox. This was always kind of a hit or miss thing. Sometimes there was something interesting in here to read. Right off the bat, this catches my eye. A ringtail twosome. This is from Milo Righetti in Transfer, Pennsylvania. And she writes, I love Nintendo Power, and my favorite game is Super Mario Bros. 3, because I also love raccoons. Of course, in Mario 3, you could turn into Raccoon Mario and fly. In fact, I have two of my own. One is an albino with white fur and red eyes. The other, which is black and brown, I named Tanuki. Jason Marks writes in, I read that you wanted to hear about disasters. Well, I have a good one for you. It started when my family moved. I put my NES in its box to be moved with the rest of our stuff. When the truck arrived at our new house, I ran out and immediately started to dig for my NES. To my amazement, a chair had fallen and the leg was struck in the NES box. When I saw it, I freaked out. I opened it up and it looked terrible. There was a big hole in the top of the control deck. I cleaned out the broken plastic and put in Super Mario Bros. 2, and wow, it worked! You can see the game pack through the hole, but it works fine. And it looks like the staff wrote back, warning, when moving, avoid placing chairs loaded with heavy objects on top of your control deck. Holes caused by chair legs are not considered normal wear and are not covered by warranty. That is unfortunate. We can repair your control deck, Jason. Call our consumer service department at 1-800-255-3700 to make arrangements. We might have to try calling that number later and see where it goes to these days. It was always kind of interesting to me too, like people would actually take the time when they would write into Nintendo Power to draw on their envelopes. You can see some of the different artwork that people sent in. That's dedication, especially to an envelope that's probably just gonna get destroyed in the mail anyway. First up, we've got Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, the arcade game. Cowabunga, arcade action on the NES. It looks like they gave it a review of 3.9 for graphics and sound, 4.1 for play control, challenge, and excitement, 4.3, theme and fun, 4.0. It always kind of fascinated me to look at how they put together these games for the review, how they collated all the information and everything, because you've got screenshots from the game. But then you've also got this artwork, and I always wondered where they got the artwork from. Was somebody in-house actually drawing that? Because there was some stuff that was included with the game. You know, you could have, I guess, scanned something from the manual, but that would have been too small to blow up like this. So the quality of this is just really neat. You know, the whole page, you've got this border with the bricks and everything, which was how the game looked. It just, I don't know, I thought that was kind of cool. The Ninja Turtles 2, it's not my favorite game on the NES. It's a great game, don't get me wrong. Turtles 3 on the NES is probably still my favorite. I felt like Turtles 3 was a little bit better. Turtles 2 is great. I just felt like Turtles 3 was a smoother game. Turtles 2, it felt like it was still maybe just a little glitchy. They hadn't quite got it right. Like if you go back and play Turtles 2 now, you notice just there's some areas where there's some slowdown or maybe some graphical glitches and stuff like that. Also, I wasn't as crazy about some of the cutscenes in Turtles 2. It had cutscenes, but they weren't quite as fleshed out as what it was in Turtles 3, and it felt like some of the levels were just it's a very short game, it seems like. Turtles 3, it just feels like is a more complete game. Turtles 2 is definitely 100 times better than Turtles 1. Someday I'm going to go back for the purposes of this channel and just for my own amusement go back and try to beat Turtles 1. I've never gotten all the way to the end. This always blew my mind how they would put these together. Whenever you got Nintendo Power, you not only got kind of a preview of the game, but they'd even give you kind of a run through of the levels. So this is basically all of level 1, and then here's where the boss fight takes place. And they give you little tips for how to beat it. Here's some screenshots from the cutscene. I mean, some of this stuff seems like no-brainers now. I mean, if I pick up Turtles 2 and try to play it, it's pretty obvious how to play it. It's not that complicated. Nevertheless, this is Nintendo Power, and you're getting tips from the pros, so you get all sorts of clues and tips. You get screenshots for what all enemies are going to be on this level. Bowling for turtles. It's telling you about these bowling balls that come through the staircases. Whenever you see a staircase, watch out for the giant bowling balls that come crashing down. Defeat the foot on the left side first, and then use the flying kick to avoid the balls. See, it just... How could you live? How could you survive without a tip like that? I mean, what could you possibly do? What little kid could solve that puzzle on their own? You had to have Nintendo Power. You just had to have it. Looking forward, it shows you the next stage. Again, here's the boss. This time you get to fight Bebop and Professor Stockman. I think you fight Bebop here. That's right. And then you fight Professor Stockman in the sewers. I remember that. Again, I have to applaud the artwork here. I don't know who drew this up. I don't know if this was something that was supplied to Nintendo Power from Konami, or if that's something that somebody at Nintendo Power had to draw up each time, but this all looks good. And again, sometimes, you know, even as a kid, if I didn't have a game, it was fun to just read about the game and kind of see what the game would be like. I didn't get to play Turtles 2 until a little later on. I think it was a rental at some point. Turtles 3 I actually bought with my own allowance money, but Turtles 2, I don't think I got a chance to really play it, maybe at a friend's house. I remember not really getting a chance to sink my teeth into it when it first came out, but it was cool just to read about it and just, you know, look at the screenshots and everything, and you know, that was entertainment when you were 12 years old or 11 years old or however old you would have been. We won't talk about how old I was, because that would significantly date myself. Again, next level, I'm actually kind of surprised at how much they show of this. Did they take you all the way to the end? Most of the times, these previews would only show you like the first 3 levels, and then after that, you were just kind of on your own. Again, Baxter, Tora. Yeah, see that. Some of these boss fights, I don't remember Tora from the comics. Was he in the comics at any point? Some of these boss fights just weren't quite as intriguing as some of the ones from Turtles 3 or Turtles in Time. And then moving forward, yeah, there was a skateboard level at one point. So just lots of screenshots from the games and information about which enemies that were in each level. They were always very thorough and very well done. For a magazine that was put together really with kids in mind, you have to applaud the effort that went into this. This wasn't just something that you could have thrown together. There clearly was a lot of writing that went into this, you know, even if it was just a game. You know, this could have just been screenshots and fluff pieces, but they really go to great lengths to give you, really to kind of give you your money's worth, I feel like. I mean, here's the overlay of the level. And again, with all the artwork and everything. Scene 5, yeah, this was another city level. I think there's actually, Jay and I actually did a playthrough of Turtles 2, I think it was last year sometime. If you go to my side channel, Friday Night Arcade Plays, there is a complete playthrough with Jason and I going all the way through this game. So, I mean, it's just a fun game that you can pick up with a friend. And just play through, and maybe like under 2 hours, I think you can get through the game if you're halfway decent at the game. Yeah, see, if you look at these levels, they're kind of very plain. You've got some city levels, you've got another city level, like here's just a whole level, is just a street. Here's the inside of a building. You know, there's not a huge variety of levels in Turtles 2. But again, I'm not knocking the game or anything. It's a really fun game, and one of the better beat 'em up games that you can get on the NES. But it just, I mean, looking back on it, for me, with Turtles 3 being the game that I mostly played through, going back and playing Turtles 2 feels just like a little bit of a step down. That's all. And then, yeah, and then you get all the way to the Technodrome. Wow, so they actually showed the entire game for this. Shredder is not amused. Yeah, you have to fight double Shredders at one point. Let's see what they have to say about this. Thumbs don't fail me now. At last you've reached the ultimate challenge, the pinnacle of power, the final test. Krang, a brutal warlord from an alien world, kicks like a cow, fires beams from his eyes and fireballs from his fists. If you manage to put him on the mat using flying kicks, Shredder shows up. But hey, he suddenly splits in two. Once you unmask the fake Shredder, follow and attack the real Shredder. Otherwise, you waste attacks and lives on the fake Shredder. So yeah, I remember that final boss fight is kind of an ordeal against fake Shredder. He's got a lightning attack that I think just kills you in one blow. So you that's tough cookies unless you're using, you know, the extra lives code, or you give yourself some extra lives on the options at the beginning. So yeah, that's Turtles 2, the arcade game. Fun game, excellent music. Level variety, not so much, but it's still, I mean, it's an all-time classic. So that's Turtles 2. Next up, we've got Howard and Nestor. So this was a comic that ran for the majority of time in Nintendo Power. I think eventually it went away because Howard actually left the company at some point. That was based off of Howard Phillips, who was he was the game master at some point. You could do a whole backstory on Howard Phillips and his involvement with Nintendo, but I'm not going to get into that now. It looks like this one is based off of these were always adventures of these two characters, Howard and Nestor, and they were usually based on whatever game was hot at that time. You might see them doing something with Star Fox or Mario or Zelda or whatever. And it looks like this time they got into it with Mega Man. So we see here Nestor's actually got the Mega Man suit on at one point, and Howard's even got the Mega Man gun. So they always just kind of get into these little adventures. Sometimes they were usually humorous. The humor was usually a little, it was always a little iffy, but nevertheless, it was fun when you were a kid. It looks like at this point, it looks like there was actually duplicate Nestors in this episode, and then at the end, the punchline is that Howard isn't sure if he saved the right version of Nestor. So, that's Howard and Nestor for you. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but you kind of get the idea. Next up, we've got Quantum Fighter. I remember reading about this. I still remember. I've yet to actually play this game. In fact, I might have to fire this up. I might fire this up and play this just for the purposes of this video and just try it out for a little bit. Quantum Fighter on the NES. Basically, it was a platformer where you use your hair as the weapon. Again, this artwork is pretty cool. I'm not sure if this was just something they pulled off of the box art, or if this was something that was drew up separately, but I just think it's cool looking how they put all that together. And again, it's giving you, we've got a rundown here of some of the different items that you can find. It looks like these are weapons, and then one-ups and stuff. They actually took the time to get screenshots of what all these items look like, and that's pretty cool. It doesn't look like it got super fantastic reviews from the staff, 3.5, 3.6 on everything. Again, I remember just reading about this, but I've still never actually had a chance to play this. So I may have to actually track this down and fire this up. I'd be curious if anybody played this growing up. I don't remember seeing it anywhere. I don't remember seeing it anywhere to buy or for a rental. But it was fun to read about. And again, these levels look a little more complicated than Ninja Turtles 2. You've got some platforming and some different things going on. So yeah, I don't have too much to say about this game, but like I said, I may have to track this down and just actually play this for a bit and see what this is like. And I'd be curious what your thoughts are on it, or if it's worth checking out or anything like that. And again, it looks like this time they only take you up to level 5, and then after that, you're just kind of on your own. And again, this is just kind of some cool artwork that goes along with it. Looks like we've got some big boss battles here, too. Again, this artwork, I don't know who puts that together, but I always thought they did a really great job with it. So, next up, we've got classified information. Classified information was always... that was usually the first thing that I would try to flip to once I was, obviously I didn't know any better with this being my first issue, but after I got a couple issues, and kind of got the feel for what the magazine was going to be like, classified information was always one of the first things that I'd flip to. I'd be flipping through the pages and looking for that manila-colored folder, because this was top secret. This was top secret stuff right here. This is where you would find codes, and any sort of cheats for the games, level selects, stuff like that. Or if there was just some sort of trick, some sort of trick or glitch or exploit that you could take advantage of. This was usually worth the price of admission right here, was just classified information. Nowadays, you can just look this crap up on Wikipedia or whatever and find out everything you need to know. But having this was crucial. So let's see what we've got. The Immortal see what they've got to say about the Immortal. I actually just played this for a video recently, and that game is hard as crap. Busy game programmers need their morning coffee, and in this awesome dungeon quest, you can use that to your advantage. In level 4, you'll spend most of your time on a magic carpet, fly through the first room, then open the door and board the carpet again, fly through the horizontal corridor close to the low wall, and try to avoid traps. You won't be able to see your character since he'll be hidden by the wall, but eventually you'll find a coffee pot, take it, and continue to level 5. After you shrink with a potion in level 5 and enter a small door, you'll find 2 trolls. Defeat them and get a bottle and censer from the chest in the room, drink the contents of the bottle, and defeat the bats in the room, then move on to the red worm room. One false step and your character will be eaten alive. The censer can warn you if a worm is close by, but for this tip, don't use it. Make your way to the hole without the floor using the censer. Climb down to the ladder to the corridor. You'll meet a game's programmer at the end of the corridor. They'll ask if you have some coffee so that you can stay awake. Tell them that you do have the coffee, and they reward you with a very strong repelling spell, which won't show on your item display. This spell will automatically wipe out the trolls in level 6 and let you save your energy for the final challenge. So see, there's always stuff like that. Or we've got power-up codes for Ninja Turtles on Game Boy. And then sometimes it'd be some little useless feature like this Dr. Mario. Sometimes the vitamin capsules stack up so high that it seems hopeless to continue with the same screen. If you can't bear to see the bitter end and you're sitting far away from your reset button, press the select, start, A and B buttons simultaneously. The game will automatically reset and give you a chance to choose a different level and speed. So basically, if you're too lazy to get up and push the reset button, you can just use the keyboard reset. Sometimes it'd be something kind of insignificant like that, but oftentimes it'd be something crazy that how would you figure this one out on your own? There's no way. So it's almost like they put this stuff in there with the purpose of selling these magazines. But again, sometimes too, if it's like a level select code, maybe what if it's a game that you couldn't get through otherwise? At least the level select code would kind of give you a chance to go back and play the game again. In the case of Dr. Mario, though, I would never go back and play it again because, okay, I'm gonna do a rant about Dr. Mario right now. Let's see. Hold on. What's on the other? I'll come back to it. So I'm gonna do a rant about Dr. Mario. I've done this rant before on live streams, but I've never done this in an official video. I don't hate the game Dr. Mario. Let me just put that out there. I think there is merit to puzzle games. Obviously, Tetris is all kinds of fun. Puzzle games are a lot of fun. Dr. Mario is it's actually a pretty nice little game on its own right. If you just remove the fact that Mario is involved, just pretend like Mario is not involved and just have a nice little puzzle game. It's a fun puzzle game. The 2-player mode is actually really cool. The way you can drop little fragments of viruses into your opponent's bottle or whatever. So that's pretty cool. Dr. Mario in and of itself is not a bad game, but here's my problem with Dr. Mario, okay? It didn't have to be called Dr. Mario. So there was no valid or justifiable reason to call this Mario other than the fact that, hey, this is a boring puzzle game and we're probably not going to sell a whole lot of copies of it unless we put Mario's picture on it and put a nice little sprite of Mario in the game. Here's what happened to me. Here's how I got duped by Dr. Mario. I got a Nintendo for Christmas one year. It was, super thankful for that. The next year, I had put in, they asked me, what do you want for Christmas, and all that stuff. And I'm pretty sure I wanted Legend of Zelda. I think Legend of Zelda or Final Fantasy were the 2 games that I wanted on Nintendo on the Nintendo Entertainment System for Christmas. I wanted some big epic quest. And I got really excited because there was this box underneath the Christmas tree at my grandparents' house that was very, it was the size of a box that a Nintendo game would come in. They didn't try to put it in a different box or whatever. So I was really excited about that. I'm like, oh cool, this is I bet this is it. This is the Legend of Zelda. This is gonna be it. I opened it up and it's freaking Dr. Mario. And I had already read about Dr. Mario in one of these issues of Nintendo Power, or at least, I was aware of it. So I knew what Dr. Mario was. I just was not at all excited about Dr. Mario. I was really looking forward to a big kind of epic quest to, a big adventure to go on in a Nintendo game. And I got Dr. Mario. And of course, you know, I mean, I was self-aware enough even as a little kid to you know, I didn't want to make my grandparents feel bad or anything. You know, you don't want to turn my nose up at the gift. So, you know, oh, thanks guys. I haven't played this one. You know, we'll see what this is like. And they're like, well, what are you talking about? You love Mario. And that, like, even, like, that is what led to me, like, that is one of many of the steps that led to me being this bitter, cantankerous old man who just hates all big corporations and marketing and all this stuff, because even as a little kid, I figured out, this is one of the things that caused me to figure out that the video game companies will just slap Mario on a useless puzzle game just to get confused grandparents to buy a Mario game. This game did not have to have Mario involved in it. You could have not put Mario in this game. You could have just put, you know, you could have just called it Virus Panic or something like that, and it just, you know, fun little puzzle game, cheap, that you can get, play with family or whatever. No. They slap Mario on it, they confuse the heck out of parents and grandparents, and then 6-year-old me gets stuck with Dr. Mario instead of The Legend of Zelda. I never did get to play Legend of Zelda when I was a kid. So, you know, I was I kind of got hosed in that situation. So, I'm always bitter and jaded toward Dr. Mario and all the other useless Mario games. Like, how many Mario games did we need? Mario Golf, Mario Tennis, Mario Boxing. I don't know, whatever. Like, how many pointless Mario games were there that wasn't an actual Mario adventure? You know, like Super Mario Brothers, Super Mario Brothers 2, and all that stuff. You for every one really good game like Super Mario Brothers 3, you ended up with like 10 useless games like Dr. Mario that just happened to have Mario on the cover. So, double dumbass on me, I guess. But anyway, that's my rant about Dr. Mario. That's why I hate Dr. Mario. Dr. Mario can go suck an egg. Moving on. Classified information. Journey to Silius. Ooh, what? Hey, I just did that game a couple months ago. Oh yeah, that's the code. If you type the B button 33 times, you get an option screen that gives you a stage select. Again, how would you ever know to do that? Conquest of the Crystal Palace, you get a sound test. You get a wild warp zone with Crystallis. Mindo Palace, there's extra stages. And of course, this is big stuff right here. Super Mario Brothers 3 tells you where all the anchors and P-Wings are. Again, Counselor's Corner. Odds are there was a good chance that at least a couple of the games that they talk about were going to be games that I actually had and could get something out of that. So definitely the Mario 3 code would have been awesome to have in this issue. And it looks like, ooh, we've got Wanted. Wanted Special Agents. A popular activity among Nintendo game experts is developing tips and strategies. Share your special tips with us. Make sure to choose your own agent number, 3 digits, and include it with your tips. Our address is Nintendo Power Classified Information. Ah, see, because each one of these has a special number next to it. Next up, ooh, this all the feels are coming back right now. This is the big one. This was the cover story of this issue, StarTropics, and this is I mean, this is one of my all-time favorite games. In fact, it's one of the first videos that I ever did on this channel. I did a full review of this game several years ago. That particular video is, I'm proud of that video, although I probably used a little more profanity than I would have cared to use. If I had it to go back, I may go back and redo that at some point, I don't know. But anyway, StarTropics. This is, like I said before, the aforementioned rant about Dr. Mario. So I missed out on The Legend of Zelda, but I ended up buying StarTropics on my own, partially based on this review, and then I specifically remember the commercials for this game. They advertised it as several games in one, because every level of the game was like its own kind of mini game. There was this big fleshed out story, your uncle had gone missing, but then each level of the game was its own kind of chapter. You know, you start out in this village and then you just go off on this big epic quest. But what was cool about it was it kind of takes place, you know, in real space and time. You know, Legend of Zelda and stuff like that is always off in some far off land or something, but this is just a normal kid One of my favorite things about this is, you know, the weapons that you use in the game are just like normal stuff, like a baseball, you know, a yo-yo. Your main weapon's a yo-yo, so, you know, I thought that was cool. Like I said before, I missed out on Legend of Zelda, so I went out and just bought this game, with my own damn allowance money. It's like, fine. You're gonna give me, saddle me with Dr. Mario, I'll go out and buy my own adventure game. So many great memories with this game. This was, it's interesting to see, the reviews. They gave this kind of mediocre reviews with, like, play control and graphics and sound. I thought the play control was fine. It's very responsive. Just one of the things, that stands out is that your character moves on a grid. So it's like every box on the game screen is just like a 1x1 grid that you move on. Your character can only move up and down or left and right. And it makes sense as you go through the game, because you'll see as you go through, there's these tiles that you can jump on. And each one of these tiles, you could, if you step on the right one, it might reveal a switch or a secret item or something. And, you know, being able to move only in a certain direction is actually somewhat crucial for getting through, especially some of the later stages where you've got, you know, these platforms that kind of move up and down, and it's all very timing related. I could see how somebody just picking it up for the first time would think, gosh, why can't I move in all these different directions? Well, if you're ever not sure, go play the sequel to this, StarTropics 2, Zoda's Revenge, I think is what it's called. And they do away with that, and your character can move in all directions. And, you know, on the surface that sounds like a good idea, but the problem is all the levels are still designed the same way, so you've still got these platforms. Well, now you're having to jump at a diagonal, and you can kind of turn your character in the air while he's jumping. You can kind of jump one way, and then while you're in midair, kind of move in a certain direction. So being able to get through a level like this is much easier with the play control restrictions that they put on you by only being able to move in the graph. If you can move in all directions, it just really goes against everything that the game was designed for. So they made the sequel, they took away the movement restrictions, but they kept the level design exactly the same. So play StarTropics 2 if you don't like the control, and then you'll realize how good the control is, and then go back and play the first StarTropics and see just how perfect it really was. Like I said, you know, I can understand if it's an acquired taste. I guess the emotional connection's always going to be there for me, because this was one of the first big sweeping adventure games on the NES that I played. Yeah, so, you know, it talks about the yo-yo here. Your yo-yo is the main weapon in this game, and then you've got all these different switches that can come up depending on which platform you step on. You might get it might reveal a switch, or it might just you know, a treasure chest might open up, or a gate might open. And then each of the levels, for the most part, they were straightforward, but sometimes they were kind of jerks. Like there was these, I remember there's one part in here, and let's see if they show it. Yeah, so like, okay, in this part, if you go, as you're going through the level, you're coming from this direction, and if you go up, unless you jump on the right platform in here and open up the switch to get to this part, it's tempting to want to go out either one of these doors. And what ends up happening is you'll open up a switch, you'll open up a door to one of these sides, and then you just end up getting stuck in there with these bats, and then you have to come back this way. So they threw all these little traps in here, and then probably the most devious one, as you're coming up this way, you come through this this hallway here, and you find a secret passage. You have to step on one of these platforms, I think, to open this up. But you open up this secret passage, and the first time you find it, you find a magic potion, and you're like, hey, cool. And then you go around and jump on these other platforms. You open up another secret passage, and you find another magic potion. You're thinking, hey, this was pretty great. And then you go around, end up opening up a third door, and on this third one, you go in there and you end up just falling in the water and die. Like, there's no way, if you open this one up and go through, it's instant death. There's nothing you can do about it. So, the programmers were kind of dicks that way, but it kind of made it fun, because then there was some element of exploration to it. And then having, this is a situation where if you did have Nintendo Power and you had all these maps, this would be, crucial, or you could make your own maps. But, having the maps for a game like this is a big deal. Having a maps for a game like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, the arcade game, the levels are pretty linear, so there's not much you can do with it, but, having these maps and knowing where all of the special items were was such a huge help in a game like this. And I fully remember having this magazine by my side when I was playing through the game for the first time, and nowadays, the experience of playing a game, if you're not sure about something, you can just, you bust open your tablet or maybe a laptop that's next to you, and you can pull up a wiki guide and there's the whole thing. But I kind of miss the days of just, having a magazine like this. You're sitting back on your couch, you've got your beverage of choice, maybe some snacks or whatever. You got your magazine in your lap or sitting next to you, and then you've got the controller. And you can just, you can kind of be referring to a physical magazine with an actual map in it. Or games that came with maps. That was always, that always blew my mind too, if you actually had a physical map that you could sit down. I just feel like that experience is kind of gone now. You just really don't see that. Even games that come with, most games don't even come with an instruction manual anymore. Best case scenario, you get a PDF that goes along with it that you can print off. Most of the time, it's just an in-game tutorial. So, having the manual and maybe having a map if you got your Nintendo Power with you, that was part of the experience to me. And there's just always going to be a certain romance with that I think is just lost on games nowadays. So anyway, I'll digress about that. Yeah, the first level, you go all the way through, and then you fight this big snake. Yeah, again, this is where the platforms come into play. I remember having to play this and jumping back and forth. You gotta jump back and forth from the platforms when he's shooting down the fireballs. And I don't see how that would be playable if you couldn't move, if your movements were unrestricted. So, again, going back and looking at their reviews for this, the fact that they kind of gave it mediocre controls, I don't know. But then they still give it 4.3 on challenge and excitement, 4.3 on theme and fun. I thought the graphics were pretty great. The cutscenes, especially near the end, I thought were really well done. And then probably my favorite thing about this game, and it's just seared into my mind. The music on this game is incredible. I mean, it's I'd have to go back and look and see who the composer was, but it is hands down one of my favorite soundtracks on any NES game. And maybe it's just there's an emotional connection there because this is what I played when I was a kid. But all of the music was great. The overworld theme was great. The dungeon theme was great. And, I remember this too. Yeah, Rob the Robot is actually in this game. He kind of makes a cameo. After you beat the first level, you take control of a submarine. You get your very own submarine. This was kind of cool. And, Rob, they could have just made it, okay, you get a submarine, but they had to put Rob the Robot in there. I thought that was pretty cool. And so Rob the Robot kind of gives you little hints and stuff as you go throughout the game and kind of just, kind of communicates with you a little bit. It was just tons of fun to have a game like this where you kind of felt like you could go wherever you wanted to and just kind of look around. And, God, just so many good memories with this. Yeah, and again, searching for the lost dolphin, that was, that's a fun mission. It's pretty easy. A lot of these missions were kind of kid stuff, but then at the same time, in level 3, it actually gets pretty scary, and I think this one just kind of leaves you hanging. Yeah, level 3, that level's a pain in the ass. That level could be its own game in and of itself. I'll come back to that, but so shake hands with Octo. Yeah, so here it's showing you how to freeze the water so that you can beat him, and then you save the dolphins, and then this is one of those notorious situations where then, you know, you go through and then Nintendo Power just kind of leaves you hanging. You get these little maps. There's the fold-out here. You get these maps of the rest of the areas, but they don't actually... Now, in the next issue of Nintendo Power, they actually did go back and show how to get through Part 3. And I think they even show Part 4, but this was kind of the weird thing about this game, because each one of these was kind of just its own little contained story in its own little contained area. Like, I couldn't go from level 1 to level 4, but go from level 1 to level 2, and then level 3, there's a storm, and this level is just an absolute pain in the ass. Because you go through, there's a tribe that you come across, and their daughter is very sick, and then you have to find a cure for the daughter, but in order to find the cure, you have to find, there's like an orb or something that you gotta find. You gotta go all the way up to the top of this mountain to defeat a boss, but in order to get there, you have to go to some castle. At some point, cross-dressing is involved. I mean, it's just, you know, there's all sorts of crazy stuff. There's a haunted graveyard that you have to go into. That whole thing is an ordeal. So that one level could have probably been its own game on its own right. And then I remember afterwards, after you beat that level, level 4 is actually really short. You get swallowed by a whale, and you just have to find your way out of the whale, and it's not that tough. So that's StarTropics in this first issue, yeah. And this article was probably, for sure, this article and the commercial was probably what led to me buying the game, so lots of good memories with that. Next up, we've got the centerfold. Ooh. Always, like, as a kid, I was aware that Playboy magazine had existed, so I knew what was in that centerfold in those naughty magazines. So then it always made me feel a little weird opening up this centerfold in a Nintendo Power, and it's just some poster, you know, for a game. I'll confess, 90% of the time I took these posters out and actually put them up. I know you know, as a collector now, everybody would probably frown on that, but as a kid, I didn't know any better. I thought they were cool, and they always did such a great job with these. Looks like this time they did it with maybe, it looks like maybe that's an action figure, or possibly claymation. That looks more like, looks more plasticky, maybe. So yeah, they always had kind of a neat way to put this artwork together. A lot of times when they did these covers or these centerfolds like this, it was, you know, either some sort of claymation or some sort of special artwork that they put in there, or maybe an actual action figure of some sort. And it was just well done. It's pretty cool. And Metal Storm, I've actually done, I actually did a review of this game a while back. Metal Storm is one of those games I didn't get a chance to play when I was a kid. It's definitely a fun game. It's a short game, but it's pretty tough. I like the whole thing with how you can manipulate gravity. I would have liked to have seen more games that used a function like that, where you could, you know, the levels were kind of designed around the fact that you could manipulate gravity. Probably the most modern equivalent of a game like that would be maybe, I don't know if you've ever played Limbo. It's a 2D kind of black and white. It's kind of a spooky game. It's came out sometime in the last 10 years. I think it's on most of the major consoles. But I just remember there was certain levels in that game where, especially towards the end, where you had to really, I think there was like a switch or something that you could manipulate that would alter gravity, or at least, you know, change gravity in some way, and then you had to kind of make your way through the level like that. Other than those two games, I can't think of too many games where they really did that, and it was such an interesting concept. I would have liked to have seen more with it, and certainly it's very well done in Metal Storm, so if you've never played Metal Storm before, definitely pick it up, and if you're still not sure, check out my video that I did on it a while back. That was, it's a good one to do. So next up, it looks like we've got a special feature just for Game Boy games. NBA All-Star Challenge, Gremlins 2, Double Dribble 5-on-5. That's interesting. I wonder if that's with link cables or how they pull that off. And then In Your Face. Ooh, looks like another basketball game. I can't say a whole lot about Game Boy. The games that I had, I played the crap out of them. I had Tetris. I had Side Pocket. It's another one of those games that your parents buy for you that's not really a real... It's not really a real game. You know, it's kind of like Dr. Mario. It's just like, oh, cool, it's a game about billiards. That's fantastic. But, I mean, it was kind of fun on a car ride. And then I had Final Fantasy Legend 2 and Final Fantasy Legend 3. Now, those games are fantastic. At some point, I'm going to do a full video on those. Round Ball Roundup. Looks like we got NBA All-Star Challenge. It's interesting to see what a basketball game on Game Boy would have looked like. Looks like we've got some cutscenes that are actually, that's pretty cool looking with the way they've got the hoop and everything and the picture and the shadows and stuff. But then when you actually see what the actual game would look like, I mean, it's a basketball game and you can play it. You put it in your Game Boy and you can play it. This one's kind of cool though, because it does have, looks like it's got all of the NBA All-Stars of the day. So I'm seeing Karl Malone, Chuck Person, Isaiah Thomas, Patrick Ewing, Charles Barkley. This is a who's who of early 90s basketball here. Reggie Theus. Ooh. Dominique Wilkins, Chris Mullin, Michael Jordan. Wow, Michael Jordan's actually in this? That's interesting. Huh. I have to look into that. He was not in most games because of that whole licensing issue. So it looks like they did a pretty good job with getting the faces in there, but again, the actual game doesn't look like it'd be much to look at. So, and then Double Dribble 5-on-5. Konami's NES classic, Double Dribble is faithfully translated into the portable format with this face-off of 8 fictional teams. It may seem a bit much to fit 10 players into the Game Boy screen, but the players are just the right size and they move very smoothly. Each team has its own strengths and weaknesses. Choose your own plays and strategies according to the abilities of your players. So it doesn't look like that was, again, cool cutscene, but the actual, well, that doesn't look too bad. That looks like a better view of the game than that one does. But it doesn't look like that was actually, it didn't use the link cables or anything like that. So I'm not sure if that was a multiplayer game or not. Multiplayer on old consoles where you had to use some sort of link cable always kind of fascinated me a little bit. There was, I did a video a while back on Zero Tolerance for Sega Genesis, and that would be one that I think would be super fun to play. It'd be kind of a pain in the butt because you'd have to have 2 Sega Genesis, you'd have to have 2 copies of the game, and then 2 TVs all wired up within probably 10 feet of each other. But if you had all that, you could team up with somebody in the game. And Zero Tolerance was like a 3D, kind of like a Wolfenstein game. So you could team up with 2 people, co-op, you know, have 2 people team up co-op style and go through these 3D levels. That would have been a lot of fun. And then I never got a chance to really mess with the link cable on Game Boy, but same concept. I was always kind of fascinated by the idea. So I was interested to see if this was multiplayer or not. It doesn't really tell us. So Game Boy has its own classified section. That's, I guess I don't really remember that, but maybe it's just because I didn't really have that many Game Boy games to begin with, so I probably never really looked at that very much, unless they had something about one of the Mario Land games or Final Fantasy Legend 2 or 3. I was probably out of the loop on that. Now playing, this looks like games that would have just came out, so yeah, Battleship, Chase HQ, The Game of Harmony, I don't even remember that. Gremlins 2, In Your Face, Jeopardy, Mousetrap Hotel, Power Mission, Solomon's Club, and NBA All-Star Challenge. Looks like we've got a couple of coming soon games down here. Role-playing fans will be happy to see that FCI is working on Ultima for Game Boy. Ooh, but that was probably pretty good. I'd be curious if anybody had a chance to play that, or any of the Ultima games on Game Boy, if they're worth digging up or not. And then we've got a Game Boy Top 10. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is number 1. Super Mario Land is number 2. Final Fantasy Legend. No surprise there. Final Fantasy Legend 2 must not have been out yet. I don't remember which year 2 and 3 came out. Tetris, Dr. Mario, Gargoyles Quest, Batman, Quicks, Castlevania The Adventure, and Double Dragon. That's interesting because Castlevania, the very first Castlevania on Game Boy is kind of a shit show, to be honest. I mean, they tried, they did a lot, they did the best they could, but it just there's just way too much going on the screen at the same time, and there's it just doesn't run well. I've tried to play it in the past, and it just it's very clunky. It looks good. Like, if you just see a screenshot of it, it's a good looking game just to look at, but not so much on the play department. Magician on the NES. I remember reading about this. I talked about this at length in the video I did on Magician a while back. And again, this channel for me is kind of a cathartic way to go back and play some of these games that maybe I missed out on the first time. Sometimes that works out, and I find one that's just, you know, a gem of a game that I'm like, ooh, man, I wish I would have played this when I was a kid. Magician, oh, man, I remember reading about this and just being fascinated by the way that, you know, you've got all these cool-looking icons and all sorts of role-playing crap to deal with, and inventory management, and ooh, it just looks like, man, this is a game that you could really sink your teeth into. But like I said in the video that I did for this, it's a great concept, but what ruins the whole game for me is the way they built in hunger and thirst as crucial for your character's survival. I mean, and it's so sped up. I mean, you could be walking around in a town. You know, the game's a side scroller. It's kind of like it plays a lot like Castlevania 2: Simon's Quest. You can go from left to right. You go through towns, and then there's areas that you can battle through, but it's all done with a side-scrolling mechanic. There's not like an overworld or anything like that. And you know, you find ammunition and inventory, and there's different spells and stuff that you can use, and that's cool. But the way they built in the hunger and thirst, I like to take my time in games like this, so, you know, I was just walking through the town, talking to people, and within 5 minutes, my character was already starving to death. And you can go and buy stuff. You can go buy food and water, but your character could only carry 3 food items and 3 water items at the same time. So no matter what, it's not like you could buy like 15 of everything and then just be ready to go, but I felt like you almost have to memorize the way to get through the game efficiently so that you can do it in the quickest amount of time possible before your character starves to death or dies of thirst or whatever. And it just kind of takes the fun out of the game, which would otherwise be a fun game. I think it would be a fun little RPG to play. But as a kid, I thought this looked like the coolest game ever. It was like, wow, you've got all this inventory to deal with and all this stuff. There's magical mystery tools, and man, this just looks amazing. And look at this artwork. That looks incredible. There's villages and people to talk to, and these, I mean, these are, for an NES game, that's a pretty realistic looking person, you know? I mean, and just the way the items stuff, I thought the art design was kind of cool. I mean, it's kind of a bland color palette, but I thought it looked consistent and it looked neat. As a kid, I wanted to play this game. So I was disappointed when I actually played it last year and did a video on it that it's kind of unplayable with those with the hunger and thirst mechanic. If a person ever wanted to do like a ROM hack of a game and just tweak like 1 or 2 things, take out the hunger and thirst in this, or at least make it way slower so that it doesn't decline as fast, and then you've got a really fun little kind of Simon's Quest type RPG to play. It's just kind of unplayable the way it was initially designed, and that's unfortunate. But again, I have to applaud the artwork. Great looking artwork. Like I said, I don't know if that was from the manual. It's just too bad it wasn't as good of a game as I feel like it could have been. Next up, we've got Power to the Player. These are this was a power meter that Nintendo Power put together to tell you how fun a game is, I guess. And they've got all sorts of criteria: overall enjoyment, story, initial feel, play control, sound, graphics, difficulty. Graphics should be clear and immediately understood, and they should be suited to the story or theme of the game. Castlevania 3 earns a high graphics and sound rating for its super detailed, haunting graphics. For play control, looks like they talked about Mega Man 3. Whether you're driving, hitting a ball, or dueling monsters, play control should be responsive and easy to understand, as it is in Mega Man 3. Yeah, all the Mega Man games had pretty great play control. Challenge and lasting interest. Shadowgate keeps you interested for a long time and challenges you to perform at your best. I don't know if I necessarily call it perform at your best. When I think of that, I think of a game that requires you to be, you know, all thumbs, like maybe a Contra game or something like that. Challenge and lasting interest. Shadowgate's very challenging, but one of the appeals of those point-and-click adventure games is that you don't have to be that good at. You could be terrible at video games, but really good at solving puzzles. And if that's the case, the McVenture series on the NES is definitely for you, because they're just kind of story games that you can just sit back and play through. I've done videos on the whole McVenture series, so definitely check those out if you're interested. But yeah, I wouldn't call it, I mean, it's a challenge, but the challenge is all puzzle. It's not, you don't have to necessarily have good hand-eye coordination just to solve the puzzles. Theme and fun. Ooh, is a game fun? Do all the pieces fit? Did you like it? Super Mario Bros. 3 rates high on all counts because it meets expectations of Super Mario Bros. Fans as in all power meter categories, and then some. Yeah, because this is a Nintendo, and we wouldn't say anything bad about it otherwise. But yeah, Mario Bros. 3 is pretty great. So that's the power meter. This is just more information about the numbers, and it gives you some other games that they rated. It looks like they rated a bunch of baseball games. Some games got pretty decent ratings. Looks like Bases Loaded got the highest out of anything. And then after that, looks like Dusty Diamond's All-Star Softball. Looks like that got pretty low ratings. So, and it kind of talks about some different ways to compare. New games can make use of more advanced technology, but sometimes their PMs are not higher than older, simpler games. Nintendo Baseball earned high marks in 1985, but expectations were higher when Bases Loaded 2 and Baseball Stars were evaluated. And again, they're probably going to give better reviews to a Nintendo-based game than a non-Nintendo-based game, but hey, whatever. And then all power meters are not created equal. No two power meters mean exactly the same thing. For instance, play control is important in most action games, but is often not of primary importance in family games like Wheel of Fortune. Learned away the importance of PM categories for different types of games. This was all designed to make sure you buy the perfect game every single time. Next up, Ultima. Quest of the Avatar. I've not played this one. And I wish that I had. It's another one of those big sweeping RPG games that I wish I would have got a chance to play as a kid. And now that I'm all old, I probably don't have time to sink my teeth into a game like this the way I would have liked. But it was fun to read about nonetheless. Again, fantastic artwork. That looks great. It's nice having a map of everything that you can bring along with you. Again, great screenshots of some of the different characters that you meet along the way. And I can't say a whole lot about Ultima because I never got a chance to play this one as a kid, but certainly looks like it'd be a ton of fun to play. It definitely was fun to read about, and it's another well-made article. So I'd be curious what your thoughts were for Ultima Quest of the Avatar. Is that one that you'd like to see on the channel at some point, or just, you know, what were your memories with it? Next up, Counselor's Corner. This was similar to classified information. This was another one of those sections of the magazine that you just always wanted to flip to and see if there'd be some helpful information about one of the games that you might have in your collection. So it looks like here, Dragon Warrior 2, where's the jailer's key? And here it is. It just tells you exactly how to get to it. Maniac Mansion, how do I open the safe? That's another one that I never got a chance to play, and I always wanted to play as a kid. I just always thought it would have looked cool. I know that the NES version was censored to a degree, but I just always was infatuated with the way the graphics looked and just the kind of the color palette that they used. Another Maniac Mansion one. How do I send the demo tape or manuscript to the publishing company? Again, it's just telling you how to do certain puzzles. They had gameplay counselors that you could write in, and these were, looks like it would always have a profile I think it was always different people each time. There was probably a big staff of them, and then it would just have little profiles for 4 or 5 of them each issue. Let's read about some of these guys. Let's see what they've got to say here. Joe Lockett became a gameplay counselor in December of 1990. Hobbies include hard rock. I don't know how that's a hobby unless you... Are you playing hard rock, or are you just listening to it? Listening to music's not a hobby. Commercial art, black clothing, Seattle nightlife, best accomplishment, finished Kickle Cubicle without continuing. Cool. Favorite game, Mega Man 3. Next up, David Nixon. Became a GamePro counselor in January of 1990. Hobbies, auto racing, skiing, windsurfing. See, those are real hobbies. Black clothing is not a hobby. Best accomplishment, first place in Days of Thunder. Favorite game, Castlevania 3. Okay. David seems like an alright guy. Sean McGoldrick. Became a GamePro counselor in 1990, January. And then there's Eric Carlson. Became a gameplay counselor in October of 1989. Hobbies include skiing, racing, motorcycles, and music. Best accomplishment, finished Ninja Gaiden 2 in 1 hour and 40 minutes. Look, if you finish Ninja Gaiden 2, that's an accomplishment in and of itself. It doesn't matter how long it took you to do it. Favorite game is Crystalis. That's a good one. And that's a guy right there. We got more. Legend of Zelda. How do I get through the Lost Woods or Lost Hills? Where is level 7 in the first quest, and how do I get to the Triforce? So yeah, this was cool, because it's just if there was a certain part that you were stuck on, it was always kind of a wild card if it was going to be a game that you actually had. Of course, I didn't have Legend of Zelda because I got Dr. Mario instead. But, you know, there was always at least a chance that the game you had was going to be somewhere in either classified information or Counselor's Corner, and you might get some sort of helpful information. Plus, it was just kind of cool to read about. And again, more screenshots and just kind of tells you some stuff about the game. So you could actually write in if you had questions. Ooh, and there was even a phone number, so you could run up your parents' phone bill. Nintendo game counselors are on call from 4 a.m. to midnight Pacific time. Kid is getting up at 4 a.m. he's getting up before school to call the counselor's corner to get advice on how to beat Legend of Zelda. Okay. Anyway. Ooh. The Players Poll Contest. I remember reading about this as a kid and just totally being blown away by this. There used to be these things called Battletech centers. I don't think that they exist anymore. I think there may be like one down in Texas that existed up until recently, but basically it was this big, I mean, look at that. It was this big, crazy looking video game. It was just a giant arcade game that you could get in and basically play these Battletech Mech Warrior type games. This was a contest, and if you filled this out and sent it in, you got to go to one of these. It was like, holy crap! Wait, where is this place, and how do I get there? I want to go to the Battletech Center. Where do I find one of these at? This looks like it would have been in Chicago, and I remember filling this out, being all excited, like thinking I maybe had a chance. I never won though, because you never win anything with these, because it was all just. Now that I'm older, I know that this was probably just a way to collect data about all these kids, so they could send you marketing for the rest of your life. Anyway, these look cool. At some point, I want to do a video when I have time to do more research. I'd like to track some of these down and see if there's any that like still work. Or like I said, I think there's one place that may even still be open somewhere, or it's like a part of another arcade, I'm not sure. But basically it was just this thing would come back, and then you could sit down in it. It had like a little cockpit, and you could just get in there, and now you're playing a Mech Warrior game. How freaking cool is that? Think of the money that got blown on stuff like this, you know? But yeah, you never hear about anybody winning these. Nobody ever really won these. This was all just, I'm pretty sure this was all just a pyramid scheme. 10 winners would have got the Battletech Gamers kit for second prize, and 50 winners would have got Nintendo Power jerseys. Groovy. Players Poll Contest, there you go. Next up, Now Playing. Here's a glance at a few recent releases that didn't score feature coverage. Take a closer look at your favorite store to see if any of these are up your alley. So it looks like we've got Galaxy 5000. That's one I've not even, I think the last time that I've thought about Galaxy 5000 was 29 years ago when I first read this magazine. I don't remember anything about that game. Shadow of the Ninja, another ninja game with detailed graphics and Ninja Gaiden-like action, may seem unnecessary. Shadow of the Ninja from Natsumi, though, adds a new twist with 2-player simultaneous action and great play control. Hey, that actually sounds pretty great. I might have to look into that. I'm only about 29 years too late. Ski or Die? I remember Skate or Die. I don't remember Ski or Die. Your guide to the latest releases, and see, we know what all those power rankings mean, so hey, we're in the know now. Dungeons & Dragons, Heroes of the Lance, Flying Warriors, Galaxy 5000, The Hunt for Red October, Isolated Warrior, The Creon Conquest, The Legend of Hero Tanma, Magician, we talked about that one. Mike Ditka's Big Play Football. The Punisher, ooh. Kabuki Quantum Fighter, Shadow of the Ninja, Ski or Die, StarTropics, Supercars, Ninja Turtles 2, The Untouchables, Ultima, War on Wheels. So yeah, this was basically just everything new that came out on or around February 1991. North and South. I've heard about this game. Strategy and action each play a part in the Civil War simulation from Kimco. That's the Shadowgate people. Take over states and fight for control of the battlefield. I've actually heard very good things about this game. This is on my list. So at some point in the next, if it's on my list, that means at some point in the next 2 years I'll get to it. But because my list is about a mile long right now. But I've heard good things about this. I've heard that this was a surprisingly well done strategy game. If not borderline, there was some weird things about it because it was the Civil War, but I'd be curious if anybody has actually played that, what your thoughts were on it. This was, again, it was just kind of cool to have these little ratings here. You know, if you knew what you were looking for, if you knew you liked RPGs or whatever, you could kind of look this over and pick one out. Probably you'd be better off with Ultima over Magician. I'm just going to go out on a limb and say that. So, anyway, now playing section. The top 30. This was, of course, top 10 lists, top 20, top 30 lists. These are always open for debate. Super Mario Bros. 3, looks like it's only been there for 5 months. It was probably at the top of this list till the end of time. I don't know. Mario's been a fixture in the #1 spot since May of 1990. He's more popular than ever. Final Fantasy's #2, NES Play Action Football #3, Mega Man 2, that's a fantastic game, is #4. It's been right around in there for 8 months. Castlevania 3, Crystalis, Dr. Mario, that's, no. I refuse to believe that is anywhere in the top 30. Any one of these games is better than Dr. Mario. I'll put it out there. I will take the Pepsi challenge. Any one of these. Mega Man, better than Dr. Mario. Batman, better than Dr. Mario. Pinbot, better than Dr. Mario. Mario Brothers 2, better than Dr. Mario. Dr. Mario, burns my ass. Tetris, better than Dr. Mario. Legend of Zelda, better than Dr. Mario. So, but anyway, you get the idea. This was kind of the pulse of, I never knew for sure what this was based on. Were these, you know, were dealers actually casting their votes, or was this just kind of based on sales, or was just what Mario, you know, what Nintendo wanted to sell you? So it looks like, yeah, if they've got the pink color coat, then that means it was new. So Ninja Turtles 2 and Dr. Mario, this is their debut on the list, along with Maniac Mansion, Ghostbusters, Rescue Rangers, and so forth. Whereas some of these have been around for a long time. So yeah, it was just always kind of interesting to look at, but you know, it's about like top 10 lists now. It's always open for debate. Except for Dr. Mario, that's no debate. You can just take that off the list. Battle of Olympus. I remember renting that, and I was confused. I was as confused by it as I was by Legend of Zelda 2. At some point, I want to go back and give that game the attention it deserves. It's on the list. Anyway, top 30, February of 1991. So there you go. And again, we've got another list. Players picks, pros picks, dealers picks. So the pros picked mostly RPGs, it looks like. We got Final Fantasy, Crystalis, Destiny of the Emperor, Mega Man 2, Castlevania, Whereas players' picks, Super Mario Bros. 3, Ninja Turtles 2, Mega Man 2, and the dealers' picks, again, were dealers actually writing in? Were company, retail stores that sold NES games? I have no idea how this works, but here's a picture of some people eating some turkey legs. So, maybe they know. Celebrity profile. This is, I remember reading these and never... This was usually one of those things I always skipped over. It's just like, okay, here's an interview with Vlade Divac. Vlade Divac. He plays video games, so you can read about it. I don't know. I never really cared one way or the other. NES Achievers. Yeah. Okay. So this was a load of crap, because I remember I tried. This was back before the age of digital cameras. So trying to take a picture with your plain Jane film Kodak camera, trying to get the light just right, trying to figure out, get the camera position just right so there wasn't any glare. People could take pictures of their high scores, or if they beat the game or whatever, and then you get your name in Nintendo Power. I never could get these pictures to take right. And this was back when you had to take pictures with with a film camera, and then you'd have to take it to Walmart or wherever and get the film developed, and then you have to wait like 2 weeks just to see if it even worked, and then 99.9% of the time it didn't. So anyway, here's your NES Achievers from 1991. Pack Watch. A look into the future of NES game packs. So looks like we had Adventure Island 2 coming up. Star Wars. They didn't even bother putting in any screenshots. Just here's some shots from the movie. We're making a Star Wars game. Double Dragon 3. There's some screenshots. That looks pretty cool. Some of these screenshots, it's kind of interesting to see, because it looks almost like they just filmed. It looks like they almost just took the picture with a camera of some sort. Like, that's got a little bit of CRT smudge to it, and that one is as well. There's just a little bit of blurring and artifacting to that makes me wonder if they just took that picture with a camera positioned right in front of a PVM monitor or something like that. Super Famicom Showcase. The Super NES is on its way, and when it gets here, it's not going to look anything like that. But this is hot news. During the Las Vegas CES, Nintendo of America called a special press conference to announce that the next generation 16-bit NES would be introduced in America in September of 1991. Due to the huge demand for this system in both Japan and the US, quantities will likely be limited at first. Wow. So Nintendo's practices with never releasing enough consoles goes all the way back to the 90s. That's good to know. Production will be increased in 1992 to fill as much of the demand as possible. We'll let you know more in next month's issue. But if we go down the page here, we get SimCity on the NES. I did a whole video on this a while back, so I won't say too much else about it, but I do remember reading this article and just, kind of being blown away by the idea of having a city simulator like this on the NES. I was familiar with computer games at the time, and, I was aware of, like, I don't remember specifically, I don't remember Flight Simulator was out at that point. I remember seeing something like that. Space Quest 3, obviously I was familiar with that. But this was a very computer-y type game. This, along with games like Shadowgate and the other McVenture games. So I was always kind of just intrigued by the idea of playing a computer game, but on your NES, because we didn't really... I've mentioned this before. I mean, computers in general were so expensive in that era, that the idea of being able to get a computer experience on a Nintendo was pretty cool. But again, this game never got released, so there was a whole backstory here. If you're interested in that, check out the SimCity video I did a couple weeks ago. But yeah, there's Will Wright and Shigeru Miyamoto. Basically, he was the guy that made SimCity on the NES, or on the computer, and he had just made Super Mario Bros. 3, so you had this meeting of the minds, and they figured out a way to get SimCity onto Nintendo hardware. Of course, we never actually got the SimCity on the NES. We did get SimCity on the Super NES, and it's if you've played the ROM of what SimCity would have looked like on the NES, they made the right choice to not release it on the NES because it just didn't work right. But just from a design, hardware, historical perspective, it's interesting to see what it would have looked like. And the fact that it could have ran at all is pretty incredible. More coming soon games. You've got Scat, which was kind of a run and gun shooter. You've got Totally Rad. I remember seeing this picture. This picture always looked. I for whatever reason I remember this. Like I said, this was my first Nintendo Power. I always remember seeing that boss and just thinking, man, that looks really. I've never actually played this one though, so at some point I will have to go back and give that a look. But that boss. I always thought that boss looked super cool. And it looks like we're getting Wolverine and Terminator 2 games. Again, we don't get a screenshot of it, it's just we get a comic book cover, and then it looks like there's a joystick that's coming out, the Game Handler. Ooh, a new device that belongs in the collection of those questing for the ultimate controller is the Game Handler from IMN Control. Ooh. The Game Handler allows you to control all the functions of your NES with one hand through a specially designed hand grip studded with control buttons and triggers. I guess that way you can use the other hand for shoveling in Doritos and not have to worry about getting chips all over your controller. I don't know. With this setup, you can press the select and start buttons without ceasing fire. The Game Handler detects the movement of your hand as you tilt the grip left, right, forward, and back and moves your on-screen character accordingly. Several add-ons for the Game Handler are in the works, including a remote control unit. Why would you need a remote control? It's only one. Anyway. Microphone, stereo headphones, and an interesting cockpit viewer. Although the controller takes a little getting used to, the motion sensitivity is pretty high. The configuration of the buttons makes for some new action possibilities in games where the select and start buttons come into play. I've never seen this thing. If anybody's used it or has one that they would like me to do a video on, send me an email. I'd love to try one out and just see what it's all about. Swordmaster. Among Activision's projects on the horizon is Swordmaster, a fantasy arcade-style action game. I've heard great things about this game and definitely want to check it out at some point. And then Nobunaga's Ambition 2. It's a strategy game based on historical time periods. All those games I've heard nothing but good things about, but never got a chance to really play them. And then more gossip, more possible. We had Lolo 3 coming up, Space Shuttle Simulator, Little Mermaid. Bandai will be adapting Disney's summer 1991 movie, The Rocketeer, to an NES game. I actually do remember that game. Two-player Pac-Man and Nintendo's sports set. Ooh. Nintendo's new sports set makes for a great way to get into the NES. This new package includes your control deck, 4 controllers, an NES satellite, and a double game pack with Super Spike V-Ball and Nintendo World Cup. Groovy. Coming soon, we've got Adventure Island 2, Base Wars, Beetlejuice, California Raisins, Indiana Jones, Metal Storm, Princess Tomato, and the Salad Kingdom. Somebody brought this up in the comments the other day. It's one of those games with the fascinating title, but I never saw this anywhere for rent. I always wanted to try it, but never got a chance to. Again, SimCity, mentioned right there, never happened. Uninvited, another great McVenture game. And then coming later, Adventures of Lolo 3, Adventures of Robin Hood. Now, was that different than the Robin Hood Prince of Thieves that we got on the NES? I remember always playing. My cousin had Robin Hood Prince of Thieves, and we played that a lot. It's kind of a poor man's Legend of Zelda. I mean, it's an RPG, but it's an action game, but it's an adventure game, but it's not really good at any of those. But it's a fun little game. It's based on the movie, but they didn't actually have the license to use any of the characters from the movie, so, like, I remember the box art was just kind of this shadowy silhouette of Kevin Costner's Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, but you couldn't actually see his face or anything, so it was kind of weird. And then all the characters on the screen in the game didn't look like their counterparts at all. In fact, I think there was one of the sprites that they used actually did look like Alan Rickman, but they switched him from Sheriff Nottingham to a different character. So there's a different character in the game that looks like Alan Rickman, and then when you get to Alan Rickman's character, he looks like somebody totally different. Bill and Ted's Excellent Video Game Adventure, that game was terrible. You could order back issues, and then there was strategy guides and tip books that you could buy for Ninja Gaiden 2, Final Fantasy, Super Mario Bros. 3. What would the strategy guide for Ninja Gaiden 2 say? Buy a Game Genie. Wanted agents. Oh, this, I remember seeing this, and now that I'm older, I know what this meant, but help stamp out fraud. Mario's used to stomping Koopas, but now he's stomping mad about bogus game packs that are showing up in retail and rental stores. Why is Mario so mad? These games pretend to be Nintendo products, but they aren't. They're counterfeits. Since they haven't been quality tested like genuine Nintendo products have, there is no guarantee that they'll work with your NES or that they won't damage it. How can you spot them? They often contain mini games in one pack, sometimes 80 or more. Some have names that are very similar to real Nintendo games, others won't fit into the NES without adapters. Most of them come from Taiwan and don't have English packaging or manuals. Look out for the official Nintendo seal of quality. If the game doesn't have it, maybe a fake. So yeah, basically they were recruiting little kids to go through stores and look for these phony games so that they could help out Nintendo. And then we got, coming up next month, more StarTropics, chapters 3 through 6. They were going to do a full feature of Metal Storm, G.I. Joe, and then, a special report, hardware. Next month, we'll report on Nintendo Entertainment System hardware and how it works. It's great reading for anyone who has ever wondered how on-screen characters and action are created. I actually don't remember that, so maybe if you guys enjoy this, I will go back and do a few more of these. I'd be interested to see what they have to say on the hardware report. And it looks like here we've got a letter from, it looks like this would have been Howard Phillips. It says, it's not every day you get the chance to simulate space flight with a genuine Soviet cosmonaut. At the premiere of Solar Jetman at FAO Schwartz Toy Store in New York City, I had just that opportunity. A real-life space adventurer himself, Nikolai Rukhanovsht, was on hand to give tips on galactic travel and to show how a pro maneuvers a video spaceship. The cosmonauts are no strangers to Nintendo games. You might remember that when they lifted off for the last year's space mission, they took Game Boys with them. In the spirit of Glasnost, Nikolai and I shared some techniques while playing Solar Jetman on FAO Schwartz's giant video wall. Yeah, you can see Howard there. That's the guy from that Howard and Nestor comic we looked at earlier. So, yeah, you were getting, you got a little personal letter from the editor there, so. And then the back page, stay in the game with world-class service. You can't beat Nintendo for great products and the world-class service to back them up. Tune-ups, spare parts, repair, you name it. All at convenient locations nationwide, over 200 and growing. Call the world-class service consumer assistance hotline 1-800-255-3700 for fast action that keeps you in the game. Anyway, this was my first issue of Nintendo Power, Volume 21. If you enjoyed this and would like to see more kind of videos like this from time to time, let me know. This was kind of an experiment, but I enjoyed kind of looking through this, and hopefully I didn't have too bad of a midlife crisis looking through something that I hadn't read through in nearly 29 years, but I had fun looking through this. So, as always, thank you so much for watching. Please don't text and drive, and I'll see you next time on Friday Night Arcade.